How many times have you guys done Google Chat?
Mhm.
This is my first time.
Oh, good.
Same
Good.
here.
Okay. So, but we won't tell the world, okay?
Okay.
Okay. This is a Google Chat I wanted to have with folks like yourselves. You're all college students. You all probably have some student loans, or you're going to be going to college or university, and you're thinking of securing some loans, student loans. And really the purpose of this chat is to share your concerns, your anxieties, your what ifs, and some of the barriers you see that might be in front of you from securing a loan, or at least some things that make you hesitant about getting loans. The reason for me that's important as an educator is that sometimes this becomes the barrier to going to school, going to continue your higher education, or delaying it. And I think that that would be um, that would not be good in my mind. That it delays or lengthens your willingness to pursue higher education. We've had student loans in the past that um, under the Bush administration had provided the financial institutions to provide student loans using tax dollars to provide student loans, but then the institution charged interest rates that was based upon the market. And so essentially they were making a profit over tax monies being loaned out to students. And it's created a large obligation, I think, that was probably unexpected at the get go. The other thing about student loans is that um, if you incur so much student loan in the bankruptcy personal bankruptcy laws, one of the things that's not considered as dischargeable during the bankruptcy proceedings are student loans, and I think that uh, that was a conscious effort by the ones who wanted to avoid bankruptcy reform for individuals. So I think those are the kinds of things that I've been concerned about and trying to change. Just recently, as you know, July 1 was when the interest rates went up from 3.4% to 6.8%. That was July 1, Monday. And we try to figure out how we can stop it, but since we're not in the position of control in Congress, we weren't able to do that. There were a couple of bills that went through the House of Representatives that was sponsored by the chairman of the Education Committee. His name is Congressman Klein from Minnesota, and they had passed a bill that provided loans that were that had um, eliminated the the ability for loans to go up along with the market. They had put a cap on the interest rates and of I think it was 8.5, but the um, the interest rates was going to be somewhere around 2.5% um, for the subsidized loans and 2.5 for unsubsidized loans. And what that means is subsidized loans are have a cap limit, a limit on the loans, and unsubsidized is a loan that has no cap. So it's still a burden no matter how you cut it. So given that, I was just hoping that we could open up a discussion and hear from you what some of your concerns and agitations and questions are relative to student loans and how that affects you. And you know that the Google chat will be streamed on our website. So this is a conversation that will be shared with other people, and hopefully it'll be instructive for whoever comes on the website, if they're parents or if they're students or anybody who just is interested in the issue would be able to hear from folks like yourselves. And you are really the constituents. You're really the clients of this whole issue. So I just wanted that opportunity for you and for those who would, click onto our website. So let's go at it. And this chat is for you.
I can go first. First of all, I just wanted to thank you for having us today. So one thing that really irritates me, like you said, student loan interest rates just went up to 6.8%. And this past year, we already surpassed the $1 trillion mark for student loan debt. So student loan debt has surpassed $1 trillion, which is ridiculous. And so two things two bills are currently being passed through the House right now, or attempting to. One is the Student Loan Fairness Act. So this is a combination between HR 4170 and HR 5895. And what this essentially does, it's also called the 1010 Act. It basically allows students, graduated students, to pay back their student loans for 10 years at using 10% of their income. And then after that, if they still haven't paid it off, it's forgiven. So that's one of them that I kind of wanted to bring to your attention. Hopefully,
That's kind of
you've heard about it. If not, maybe you want to sign on.
Yeah, that's a creative way of doing it where there is no barrier to entry into higher ed or into university, but there's a certainty of what your obligation will be after, and that when you get a job, that a certain percentage of your pay will be allocated and dedicated to paying off the loan, which appears to be more sensible and doable for and gives people at least the access to the financial assistance. And then also you said that if after 10 years it still hasn't been paid off, the remainder of the principal would be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. And so hopefully that will bring down to the $1 trillion debt, because what we're seeing right now is students just don't pay it back. Like, students spend their entire lives and use Social Security or some other form of like financial aid to repay off those loans when they're like 60 years old. And then so the second one is the Bank on Students Loan Fairness Act. And essentially this one points out that banks are getting loans at under 1% interest rates, yet students are now 6.8, which isn't really fair. So that Senator Warren's introducing it, and she is basically saying that students should be down at bank loan interest rates, which is pretty cool.
That was a 1% interest rate?
Yeah.
Yeah. The corollary to that is the Federal Reserve banks receive funds from the Federal Reserve, and I think the last time we did this, what they call quantitative easing, there's about 12 or 13 Federal Reserve banks in this country. They're all private banks, and they receive these funds from the Federal Reserve. And I think the last allocation was somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 billion at a very low interest rate. I think the overnight interest rate was something like 0.75%. Maybe we ought to just attach the same conditions to student loans as we give to banks. Banks will will hold our money and also make money for themselves using our depositors' funds, but also they seem to be getting some help from the Federal Reserve, tax dollar monies. Well, actually, I'm not even sure they're tax dollar monies because they just print the money and send it on to the banks, right? And so if that's the case, investing in students and young people, and when they graduate from universities, the statistics says that every student that graduates from university or colleges end up paying $1 million more in taxes than the average citizen. So there's a return on that investment. So I think that we ought to think about that. Good point. Thank you, Colin.
Anytime.
Anybody else? Any concerns? Yeah, go ahead.
I can go next. I graduated from UC Irvine 2 years ago, and I just wanted to kind of talk about the difference in price of education because I went to UC Irvine for 4 years, and I came out with about 21,000 of debt. My younger brother went to a 2-year community college and then transferred to UC San Diego for 2 years, and he's going to come out with the same amount of debt for 2 years that I came out with 4 years. So I think the cost increase in education is kind of insane. I don't understand how they can justify doubling or tripling the cost of education when you have students that have they don't have good access to counselors. Class sizes are huge. Students are sitting on the floor. So how can you increase the cost when you're not really giving students their money's worth? And then I think Colin made some really good points about the interest rate. I don't understand why people are making money off of us when we're the generation that should be buying houses, buying cars, taking care of our parents, having families. Like if our generation is stuck living at home and we can't find jobs or do anything like that, it seems like it really cripples the entire economy. So it's really in everyone's best interest to make something work. So yeah, I think those acts in Congress make a lot of sense.
That sounds like a great commercial, you know.
I'm sorry?
That sounds like a great commercial, which you just said. And then it sounded like there was a play on words like, it's not in the best interest of our country to have this kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of parents would love that too, that they would like to see the youngsters step out and become independent. And so I think you're correct.
If I could actually speak about what Roma was talking about. You mentioned that you went to UC Irvine and that you graduated with $21,000 of loan. I'm going to guess that you probably got Cal Grant. Okay, so at a UC and CSU, well, I'm not sure about CSUs, but at a UC and most all universities, you can get a higher amount for Cal Grant. It's closer to about $12,000 for public universities and about $9,000 for private universities. But at the community college level, the most you can get in Cal Grant is about it's about $1,500 per year, which is a significant difference in price. So as a community college student, you would have to take out more. That's actually what I did. And also, if you're an older student, so like I am, I actually don't qualify for Cal Grant anymore because there's an age restriction. And after you leave high school for about a year, the restriction to Cal Grant becomes more and more, so much that basically only 1 out of every 17 students who apply for the Cal Grant, who are qualified for the Cal Grant, can actually receive the Cal Grant. I will receive the Cal Grant this fall when I transfer, so I'll be taking out a loan, but the UC's system does cover what the Cal Grant would have covered. But again, at a community college, the Cal Grant is so much lower that they just have to take out a loan if they want to make it feasible for themselves. So I think that's where you're seeing the cost difference between your going to UC Irvine and your brother going to community college.
Just to make a point on that, also the cost in tuition has gone up significantly. I mean, it was, I think, almost at least $5,000 difference just in 2 or 3 years. The cost of tuition has gone up, and that, I mean, I don't think that much has changed in a few years, except the economy has gotten worse, and then they raised the cost of tuition. And I think Pell Grants were significantly reduced. That was a big part of my financial aid package, and they don't offer nearly as much money in Pell Grants anymore. So you're taking out more loans as opposed to taking out, as opposed to getting grants. But that's interesting. I didn't know that about community colleges.
Yeah, I unfortunately had the experience of finding out. And actually, too, I think if I had been able to go to college when I first graduated from high school, which was in 2000, it was only, I think, at a community college, it was like $10 or $11 a unit. Today, it's like $46 a unit at a community college. I don't know what it is, what it was, or what it is the difference in universities, but I know it's probably on par the same amount.
You know, community colleges used to be called city college. And the reason it was called city college is because it was an effort by municipalities to provide continuing education for adults and for GEDs for students who didn't graduate from high school. And then the state took some of that responsibility. And over time, the the student fees went from almost virtually nothing to what you're mentioning right now, $45 a unit, and that's ludicrous. And and then the community college, I mean the just state universities uh, used to be considered more public state universities, along with the California university system. But because the way we do our budget and the way we um, finance our public education, uh, the cost of keeping these places open has been passed on to the students rather than become a burden of the taxpayer. And I think that we've lost our way, we lost our focus. And I guess since I've been in the California Assembly back in the 90s to today, we've probably built almost 20 penal institutions versus one state college in Monterey and one Cal campus in Merced. And so when you look at that, you decrease the slots for students. That drives the cost up, including the cost of paying for professors and everything else like that. And but at the same time, we increase the number of jails at the cost of taxpayers' money, without looking at the penal institutions and determine whether everybody that's in the penal institutions deserve to be there. One thing is clear: students deserve an opportunity to go to higher education. And in California's heydays, we took it upon ourselves as taxpayers to make sure that the young people had an opportunity to go there, and that has become more and more diminished. And it makes us feel like it's our fault rather than a fault of the state system and the federal system that who say the young people are our national treasure, and yet we don't invest in it. So I think that we got to keep pushing this. So let's see, Stephen, did you have anything to add?
Yes, sir. I'd like to come at it from a different direction and
Okay.
kind of piggyback on, I guess, Colin's point of higher education and how the interest rates should be low. Well, I want to look at probably defining what higher education really is, because I think we're seeing this trend of for-profit universities, right? Like University of Phoenix, or like those other universities that you see advertised as online schools. Online education is certainly a good technology, but we are seeing this trend of for-profit universities encouraging students to take out maximum student loans. And some of these for-profits don't have the perception of a quality education. Some of these students, they don't come out as qualified to place into the workforce. And what happens is when they encourage their students to take out maximum student loans, the money goes to Wall Street investors. And I don't think that's really the point of student loans. And then I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I mentioned before how financial institutions were using students as a place to make a profit, and I'm dead set against that. And I think that we have to also protect young people from being victims of predators, and it's a predatory approach to a need that is a social need, and it's a personal need for our community and for our individual students. So I think that that's something that we just have to keep pushing back and letting people know that you can't do this. Usury should not exist in the arena of education. That's exactly what it is.
Right. And my second point, is that there's also this trend of eroding the ability of the loans to be at a low cost. So from my experience, so I graduated from undergraduate in 2009 from the University of the Pacific in Stockton. I recently graduated from graduate school this past May 2013 from the George Washington University in DC. When I first got into grad school, I had to take out the graduate student loans at 6.8% rate. But as you may recall,
How much would
6.8 for graduate students, and that's the federal Stafford rate for grad students. So it's already at the higher rate as opposed to undergraduates, which is 3.4. But because of the fiscal cliff compromise, you may remember this in 2011, the graduate loans went from what is called a deferred subsidized loan to accruing interest while I'm still at school. So prior to the fiscal cliff, the interest would have been deferred until I graduate. But because of the compromise, I think the compromise was between Pell Grants and graduate student loans accruing interest. And honestly, I would have chosen the Pell Grants as well, you know, with your feet to the fire. But because of that, graduate students now have to accrue interest while they're still attaining their education, which you know, seems a little bit unfair. You know, you're trying to get your education and you're trying to repay the loans at the same time, right? It doesn't seem like it makes much sense to kind of set you back that much further when you're really trying to, you know, better yourself and get a higher degree to better society.
Yeah, and if you take the whole financial picture together, and you took the whole budget together in this country, and you ask yourself, how much does it cost to be able to sustain the effort to keep young people into universities? We know the payoff. And then you compare that effort to allowing oil companies to have subsidies of billions of dollars over and above their own profits. You just got to ask yourself, is this a fair system, and is this a fair approach to running a government, running a society, come together on a process, a budget process that makes sense for our country? We give more consideration to corporations than we do to students. Or maybe I should say, we give more consideration to corporate bodies than to student bodies. You know, and that's what it boils down to. That's the point you're making. And we should not have to make choices between what we do with Pell Grants, which are grants for those who really need it, and being able to provide financial assistance at a fair rate so that it's not a lifelong burden. My cousin went to UCLA, and then he went to law school, and he has an incredible amount of student loans and he's been out of law school for a couple of decades, and it took a long time for him to be able to pay that off. And so it's still a greater barrier today than I think most people realize, when people like yourselves have to make that decision. Am I going to create a liability for myself in the future that seems almost impossible to address? And it should not be that kind of a barrier.
I wanted to say, I think that this increase is the tip of the iceberg, this interest increase, because there are, I feel, so many different problems with the way our education system is in terms of students having access to an higher education. We are the future, and we should be treated as such. I'm not saying baby us, but at the same time, we shouldn't be hindered in the pursuit of higher education. Now, at the same time, the way Congress hasn't really, well, the way it's doubled like this, the interest rate, I feel like it just shows a lack of, you know, caring for the future, caring for the students here. Like you said, they allow subsidies for oil and corporate bodies. However, the students are treated this way, that we can't even keep the interest rates at 3.4. And as also the work, you know, the way the workforce is nowadays, it's so different from 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. You have to get a higher education. There's only a few people that really make it beyond, you know, minimum wage or out of poverty without an education. And I'm a first-generation college student here, and my parents, they're making great money because they're from a different economy than we are in right now. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of frustrating the way we're being treated, as if this is a commodity that we don't necessarily need, and it's kind of punishing us in a way with the interest rates as well as the cost of tuition, and then the lack of jobs that when we graduate. It's really frustrating. It's so different, and yet we're given so many obstacles at the same time.
You know, how would you restructure this whole thing? And what kind of advice would you give members of Congress uh, in terms of this dilemma that young people are facing? Because I have to believe that members of Congress also have children and have growing children who have to face this themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though we have a great job, it's not the kind of job if you have 2 to 4 youngsters that our salary can afford to pay
Right.
for, a university tuitions. We all have to make sacrifices. How would you pose a question or redirect their attention?
Well, I think one of the biggest things would be, and this is somewhat controversial. I've heard, the pros and cons of doing this, but severely limiting the amount of money a student can take out, especially in postgraduate education like law school and grad school. It's given an unlimited amount of money from what I've heard. My fiance is going to law school, and basically it doesn't have that. I believe it's about $50,000 or so is the cap per year. That's a lot of money, and the schools, because students are able to take out such large loans, the schools don't really have to restrain themselves in the cost of tuition. So law school went up from, or this is, a little different. It's not undergrad, but it went up from something like, with inflation, it should be, if it remained the same rate at the 2000 or the 1980s levels, it would be about $12,000 a year, whereas the average cost of law school now is $50,000 a year, and that's with inflation. So currently, I'm enrolled at San Jose State University, and like you said, these are supposed to be more accessible for students. They're state schools, they're public schools. Per semester, it's $3,750. That's looking at I'm a transfer from community college. I would amass the same amount of loans as Roma, and she UCI, which is now significantly more. So tuition is
the issue of postgraduate, like you said, the professional schools, where
right.
You're saying that there appears to be a larger amount of money available, but Stephen just said that he's in postgraduate and he's getting charged 6.8%.
Right.
So I would ask, is that loan that your fiance is getting, is that a 6.8% loan?
I believe so. I haven't really worked out the.
Yeah, and that's a steep one. Even for postgraduates, when you seem like you're getting closer to a job market.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter how you cut it, I think student loans, student grants should be considered an investment in the future. That's one. Two, we shouldn't be enslaving or creating an indentured generation for higher education. It still should be looking at young people as our future taxpayers, contributors to the wealth of our country. The other thing is, it's just it's a mentality that we have in our society right now, that we're not looking at young people as our future, and it's almost like we want, if we didn't catch the kids when they were young and got them to drop out or flunk out, or we're catching the graduate students and students who want to go into higher education to see if we can kill them off there before they reach full citizenship, and it just feels so contrary to what the pathway should look like for our young people in education. There's we got to wrap up, but I wanted to sort of wrap up with this idea that you know we have to set aside um, our thinking and trying to stop looking at the education pursuit as a investment, as if we're looking for immediate profits. Like the student body is a place where we make an investment, look for a return, immediate return based on the market. It's crazy. Right now, the interest rates are really low for people who want to buy a home. It's somewhere around 3.5, 4%, and the economy's down and people are unemployed. And so, the institutions are trying to keep interest rates low so they can stimulate the economy. And then you look at the student population, and we're doing exactly the opposite. We're increasing interest rates and not encouraging students to go to school. In fact, the increase in student rates does just the opposite. It makes them feel like, can I make this commitment? And because I want to be able to fulfill my obligations if I create a liability. It's not an open pathway. It's a pathway that we made narrow and rough. And so we really have to make sure that we take care of how we lay open the future for young people like yourselves. The five of you right now will probably make more contributions into society and to your own communities in ways that we'll never ever be able to predict, but it will always be good. But we create these barriers to that future for you. So I want you to sort of keep talking about this, keep putting back into our faces, the policymakers' faces, is this what you really want to do to our society, to us? And put your face to the issue and put your issue in your faces in front of the other the policymakers, and really become activated in this whole arena, because it's really important. I just want to let you know that I thank you for your participation today. And on the state college, I went to San Jose State myself, and I'm going to blow your mind. In 1959, my tuition was $50 a semester.
Oh my goodness.
And I came back to college in '69, and it just blew my mind. I had to pay a couple $100 for a book. And why can't we put all this stuff online, or put it in, digitize all this stuff so that we don't have to pay the kind of money that these companies are doing? So a lot of these people who write their textbooks, they charge their students for the knowledge that they put on paper that they gained from their own education. So it's we have to start looking at our whole system and try to reinvent ourselves. And it's not only for ourselves, but it's for the future. We just got to do something about it. So again, thank you so much for sharing, and I hope that you felt that this was an opportunity to lay your stuff out, and that hopefully the information you gave me, and Colin, thank you for doing the basic research too, in helping us kick off this conversation. So I'll pledge to you that I'll do everything I can to make sure that we don't create another generation of indentured servitude in our young people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.